Terrace, necessary, I guess. And I'm with Proud, and I'll be one of the co-presenters tonight. Becky?
I'm Becky Miller. I'm also proud member, and it's good to see people in person tonight, which is part of the point of the whole thing.
And I'll be helping also. I'm Alan Miller, and want to start off with thanking the Scott and the Public Library for being a wonderful host for this, for providing us with the space and the extra support, and we really appreciate it.
Yep. So a few months back, this report was sent out, and it was funny because I was reading, I love Ferguson, or I care about one of those Ferguson pages, and somebody was complaining about now that COVID's over, nobody gets together, and nobody in the community talks to each other, and how they should talk to each other. And that person is not even here tonight. And we sent them several invitations. But anyway, that's another whole thing. As my grandmother said, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it. So, when this report came out, and then I saw those posts on Facebook, I called up Becky and Ellen. I said, we should have a session just about what they talked about in this report, because people are talking about it online, but they're not talking to each other about it. And so let's just try and see what happens. And so several months later, this is the beginning of the presentation. And what we'll do tonight is showing the highlights of the report. The report is much longer because we really want to just sort of give the highlights of the report and then have you all break up in groups and actually discuss some of the points in the report themselves. But before we get started, can everybody just briefly tell us where you live? I live in Old Ferguson East.
Same.
Listen, Terrace.
All right, Cassandra? She lives by January 4, Park.
I'm way up in North Ferguson.
All right.
The 270 highway
Oh, all right.
at the border.
Okay, all right. Gotcha.
We're going this way. Okay.
Yeah.
Up near Paul's Market.
All right. Yes, sir.
I'm an outsider. I live in Belnor, in the Normandy School District.
So you're regional. Because I work at UMSL, so
Yeah, I'm a block from Austin.
Oh, okay. All right.
in Belnor.
We have a couple behind you.
Yeah, we're on Royal between Elizabeth and Nancy.
Okay. All right. Lindsay lives out of town. Okay.
Ward 1, Park Monceau, right on the tip, northern end of Ferguson.
All right.
John Stephen, Forestwood Neighborhood Association.
All right.
I'm Jeff from Forestwood as well.
Mary Ann, January Wabash area.
Okay. Chuck.
Park myself. I'm Scott from Woodson Terrace.
Okay. And we have a lady who just came in. We want to embarrass her. So.
Daphne Phillips, Berkeley, Missouri.
All right. Thank you. So, because I was talking to Alan and Becky, I said, wait, we talk about togetherness and conversation and community. We need to sort of identify where we live before we even start the session. So we're ready.
Okay, including the people who are on Zoom.
Oh, yeah, Michelle. Who's on the screen? The people who live in what neighborhoods on the screen? Can she hear us?
All righty, we have an Isaiah Melendez. If you guys could type in the chat where you're from, or you can unmute to let us know.
Yeah.
So we have about 4 or 5 participants online. And so we'd like for you guys to chime in and let us know. Isaiah says high school. All right, Deborah Grady, we'd like to know where you're from.
Ferguson East.
From Ferguson?
Mm-hmm. Ferguson
Okay,
East.
great. And I believe Cassandra is there, but I believe she's also from Ferguson on this evening.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started and
Okay.
Alan's go for it.
Well, of course, the titles are Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation. So as Dr. Jackie has already said, it's a fairly long report. So we're going to gloss over much of it because the idea is then to develop the discussion through it. So some of this is just kind of an outline here, but if you want to download the report, that's the website for it and the QR code. So we can come back to it if you'd like it later.
Yeah.
Let me do this one. Okay. So the definition of social connection is your relationships and your interactions, and it's very all-encompassing. Friends, family, but also what you do within community groups, what you do online, schools, workplaces, churches, all these things. And well, I guess we'll just keep it quick with your initial definition.
What is the source of, what is the,
This is the
website?
Oh, yeah.
Surgeon General's.
Back up, let's tweet to the website.
Yeah, well, we could do it next
Oh,
month.
wait a minute.
I got it. No,
Yeah.
down one.
Yeah.
I want to see the website.
Well, what I was just saying is this from the U.S. Surgeon General
Okay.
that he provided it. So it's,
Forward slash, right.
Yeah.
give it Martha.
Thank you.
All right, so basically what they were trying to do with this report is, and I actually heard it on the radio, and this is some of the points that they were talking about, and they were saying why social connection matters, because most people think they have social connection because what they're on the phone, or they're online, or they have that type of social connection, but they're also talking about social connection like us in the room. And so it's one of the things that they found out is individual health, population health, community safety, resilience, and prosperity were the things that came up the most, things that are most important. Can
you read that okay, Beck?
Sure. So one of the first things that social connection affects, or the lack of social connection, is illness. Even just being isolated and alone affects our health and affects physical health as well as our mental health. And if you look at the side box, this lacking social connection is more hazardous to your health than smoking, drinking, being inactive, obese, and far worse than air pollution. So it's hard to imagine that just being alone is that hazardous.
And just talking to my doctor, the second one, hypertension, is shot right through the roof. And not only from COVID, but also part of the isolation from COVID itself. And with hypertension, that's high blood pressure, it's silent. So you don't know it until you start getting headaches or you're getting side effects. And, I had to admit I had to change medication. So again, another one that came up a lot was diabetes. And that's another one of those sort of silent things. And then the third one, talking to my doctor, was depression and anxiety. So again, these are all sort of silent things, but things that actually came out of this report that they found.
And the report has all kinds of statistics to show how these things actually happen. We're of course not going through all that, but if you go to the report, you'll be able to see all that. So this is kind of a summary of how that works, that there are 3 different influences of social connection. Becky already was describing it. How it affects us biologically, like our stress, our hormones, inflammation, gene expression. Psychologically, your meaning and purpose, hopelessness, depression, behaviors, sleeping and smoking more, physical activity, and the like, and that these things then, the social connectedness, the report shows, has a direct influence then upon the morbidity, the health that you experience, and on your life expectancy.
So one of the things that this report was talking about is that they're looking at the population health, because they did long-term studies before and right after COVID, but mainly when people were in isolation. And so they're looking at the effect on population health, basically made them think about natural hazard preparation and resilience. I remember how many were here when a tornado came through? Yeah, and unfortunately, my neighbors and myself, we had gone through that civil defense training. So we had it together. Everybody was out there with their saws and making sure that they had turned off the electricity so they wouldn't shock themselves. And that was really sort of a good feeling to see the neighborhood come out and do that without anybody calling anybody out. They were just there. And then again, the community safety, we've all talked about that. We talk about it next door all the time. Economic prosperity, what's happening with downtown Ferguson, what stores opening. Civic engagement, we're talking about that all the time online, more or less than face to face. But again, what they found through this isolation and through this study, that all these areas that we deal with almost every day were affected by isolation. This is your favorite slide.
So some of the trends for social connection that we can see an uptick in the amount of social isolation, household isolation within one household seems to be decreasing. Companionship in general, we're seeing a decrease. Social engagement with friends, as much as our teenagers value their friends, the actual social engagement is dropping drastically, as well as non-household engagement in general and just social engagement. It's all dropping, and isolation is going up.
So Ken, how many people recognize any of these things? Have you seen this? It doesn't, not saying you have to say, yes, it happens in my household, but you know, have you actually recognized this among people, you know, or?
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the key to a lot of it, the three vital components of social connection. So first is the structure of it, that, you know, we'd already talked even the first slide about the different types of relationships you can have, whether it's in your family, friendship circle, marriage, school, work, all these different environments that you work through, and then how they are set up has a lot to how you interact with each other. Workout, of course, is much more hierarchical than the family setting or whatever. Second is the function, the degree in which the relationships serve the various needs for your emotional supports, mentorship, support in a crisis. This is getting to the heart of the matter. So in response to the last slide where we talked about how things are decreasing, there's all this extra social connection or social media. You have all these things going on, but the problem is the quality of what's going on. So you can go online, but if you're just hearing all this negativity and attacks that are on social media, that's not social connectedness, or it's a very negative social connectivity. So it actually is causing more harm than maybe disconnecting to some of these things. So the last one, then again, is then the quality, the positive and negative aspects of the relationships and interactions. Whether you find the relationship satisfactory, whether there's a strain through the relationship, and whether there's inclusion or exclusion caused by that environment that you're within.
Well, how many people gotten caught up in this? I care about Ferguson. There's Ferguson Peeps, there's Ferguson Collaborative, there's Ferguson Divine, and somebody will put on one negative thing and then it goes on and on and on to the point where you don't hardly have any rebuttals. Like you don't see an article going, no, this is what really happened. But you get all the other opinions and none of them are really, they're sort of founded up here, but not necessarily in reality. And what they talk about in this report, the isolation is sort of reinforces that. You know, and again, it's detrimental. You know? So looking at this, it says the factors that can shape social connection are the individual, the community, relationships, and society. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna break out into groups and use each one of these topics. And we have underneath those topics, you'll see a long list of things that relate to it. But what we'll do is we won't go through all those things, but those will be highlights to help you also to get together into groups and disseminate this information. What's going on? Are you seeing this in Ferguson or Berkeley or wherever you live? Are you seeing this online? Are you seeing this in the community when you go to the grocery store? You know, or are you seeing it into the larger society, which could include your church or other social places that you might go to? And so the whole point of looking at this is the factors that can shape the social connection. A lot of times we don't think about it until afterwards. So by breaking up into groups, we can maybe talk about examples that we've seen or we've been participating in or that affect us to move to the next step.
So if you're taking a look at different ways that you can strengthen social connection, is first of all, look at the communities and how do we develop community connections? The built environment, parks, public buildings, the community connection programs such as this, and the institutions like the library that help foster those kinds of community connections, which involves needing to invest in those institutions that bring people together, and then enact pro-connection public policies. And I'm not really sure what all the Surgeon General said about this. Maybe you can expand on that, but look at different parts of our community and how they can work together. So it can be connections like between our churches, between our different civic organizations.
Neighborhood groups.
Pardon?
The neighborhood group.
The neighborhood group,
Proud.
certainly. So, and proud and encouraging the community as a whole encourages these kinds of large group connections. And then we need to mobilize the health sector, get the health sector aware of when people are being isolated. Train healthcare providers to watch for this. Look at the kind of support their patients are or are not getting, and expand the surveillance and intervention, so that you may have your doctor asking more than just, have you had enough exercise this month, and asking about how often are you getting together with people, and so you're looking at your healthcare workers who are paying attention to this factor. So another factor is the digital environments, which we have a lot of complaints, a lot of concerns about. So the need for transparency, safety standards, pro-connection technologies, so that people are able to better connect. And then just generally deepen knowledge, awareness of the importance of social connection, whether it's at the national research level, media, advertising, making public aware, so that people are generally more aware of their own need and the needs of others, to make sure that there's connection. And then you build a culture of connection. You develop the values of kindness, respect, service, commitment to one another. Model as individuals and as organizations, model connection values, especially if you're in a position of leadership and influence. A teacher, a pastor, a Girl Scout leader. Make
Yeah.
sure you're modeling those connections.
And also under the culture is that, this whole area has several different cultures. And they don't necessarily interact. I'm an anthropologist, so I'm constantly looking at this. And it's not necessarily based on ethnicity, but socioeconomic levels. And basically how long a person, sometimes on some committees, I will actually say how many years I've been in Ferguson. Just because that means a lot to certain people. And that's one of the things that I think that needs to be worked on even more, is that there are all these different cultures within Ferguson, and really I'd say the North County area, that are sort of acknowledged but not acknowledged, and also not acknowledging that other culture also makes for friction between groups. And sometimes it's a silent friction, like you don't go to my church, but you go to that church. It's unsaid, but it's there. So I think that's a way that we could really jump ahead in North County, especially, is just start off looking at each other's cultures.
And this is a kind of a difficult slide because it's so much of a summary of the whole ending of the report. So after this, it goes into 12 different sections on what you can do of suggestions that are made. And the 12 different are for local governments, national governments, governments in general, institutions, philanthropists, technology companies, what you do in your workforce, etc. It's pretty conclusive. So we were going to suggest that there are 3 different areas we kind of wanted to focus on. The first topic is what can individuals do? We'll go back to this real quick. Second is what parents and caregivers can do. And then the third we were discussing tonight is what community-based organizations can do. And the reason I went through these quickly is so that we were thinking that if we could divide into groups on these 3 topics to discuss them. So I wanted to give you an idea of, so you could start thinking about where you would like to fit in tonight. And so we could have however many groups we want to do here. And then we were asking Michelle to be the facilitator for the same discussion on Zoom. So as we're meeting here, the Zoom discussion can go on simultaneously.
Could I suggest that when we break up into groups, are there enough copies of these PowerPoint slides? Okay, good.
Well, I have the questions. I didn't do the whole thing.
What? And so basically, because we have enough to break out into at least 4 groups. And with the community-based organizations, Michelle, can you deal with that one online, please, with your online group, especially since you have.
We certainly will.
Okay, that'd be great, and especially since.
Yes, we've already put it in the chat.
Your forte. And then we'll roll back, Ellen, to the other ones, please.
Yeah. I'm trying to bring them back in.
No, they're cool.
Okay. Yeah. So we go back to the top. So
yeah.
The first one for individuals has two slides.
Right. So does everybody have a handout?
No.
Okay. And some of those we could probably just release.
Each group is going to need to refer to this information during our discussion. So you've got that printed out.
So I've got the end slide printed out, but I don't have the rest of the presentation.
No, we're just looking at these.
Right. So I have 2 copies of each.
I know Jeff brought 3 copies. Well, we got them.
Gotcha.
So he's in one of the copies. And so
that's one group, she has one.
And then I can give this.
Anybody in the back will be for. So why don't we just divide it up, here, here, and here.
Okay, so.
Because basically what we're gonna be looking at is what individuals can do, but what we'll have is these points. And you can look through the points and decide what points you'd like to discuss. You don't want me to count you off, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
Jackie, just be
Okay, Miss Jackie,
3, 4. 1, 2,
I'm gonna
3,
be
4.
on.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you're 4, over here, 3 over here.
okay, Zoom, I don't know if you can hear me okay. I just wanted to make sure that, I'm not sure if they're going to give us an actual cutout session, but if not, we would like to get those answers. If we can get them in Zoom, that would be fine in our chat, so that we can have them for the answers that we have. So we want to start with, can everybody hear me okay?
I am stopping the recording now.
There's only.
Now that'll make two recordings.
Okay.
Back up, so there's three. Okay.
We wanna, you know,
Face to face.
Did you have a good conversation?
Hey, Alan, how about this final wrap up, make one big circle instead of a bunch of rows?
I'm not meeting the week before.
Alan,
We want everyone to see each other.
I like that.
Alan, let's make a huge shape something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all, come this way. We're making a half circle.
Are you shaking?
Yeah. Well, we have to do. All right. Yes, circle's fine. They're gonna put a couple
Back over there, he's pushing us out.
Alan, I'll let you start this, because I got to sit down and follow. Okay, group 1.
I guess that was us.
All right, so what's your idea for us to start on tomorrow?
Okay, so we're really focusing on,
All right, y'all got listen. Thank you.
and, so the handout we had was talking about all the different kinds of ways for self-care, what you can do to help other people.
And we started looking more into, first of all, we started talking about individual attitudes within ourselves, not focusing so much on those activities as our attitudes. It's like being friendly to those who criticize you, find common ground with people that you don't know well, find one good thing about them and build from there, and model respect, and how often somebody needs to see respect in action. And then we've switched the focus and talked about self-care. And when we've been talking about individual efforts to reach out to others, realizing that we've got to do some self-care in that process, that being aware that when you help others, you're helping yourself, that there's a benefit to doing all of that outreach that handout talks about. And that sometimes that self-care is hard. You get so in your rut that reaching out, making that effort to get out of that rut becomes more and more difficult. Because isolation, we said, kind of comes on gradually. And you've been that way for a while, and all of a sudden you go, wow, what happened to all my connections? And to make that effort to go back and reconnect or reconnect elsewhere can become more difficult. And then that just being aware of this as a need, that this kind of session is helpful, just as a reminder that not only it's what we do for others, it's what we do for ourselves.
And I'm gonna add this real quick. Some of you may have seen the movie Otto, and the movie Gran Torino with, Otto was with, Hanks.
Tom Hanks.
And then, Gran Torino was with,
Clint Eastwood.
what's his name?
Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Okay. In both movies, Clint Eastwood and Tom Hanks, they had self-isolated. They were sad about their wives had passed. And I think Clint Eastwood role, he was a little bigoted because he looked at these Chinese people as, others. Tom Hanks, on the other hand, he was so bitter about losing his wife that he didn't want to be bothered, he was just totally isolated. But because they reached out in the movie with Tom Hanks, the Hispanic family, they made him cookies and he thought the cookies were good. Clint Eastwood, the Chinese cooked some food, but they were mean and isolated. But because these families and these people kept reaching out, and in the end, Otto, he ends up leaving his condo to the Hispanic family and giving her the car. And in Clint Eastwood's movie, he leaves the Chinese young man his car. But at first they were mean, didn't want to be bothered, but because they continued to reach out and show they cared, they won them over. So I think a lot of times we don't want to get offended by people who have self-isolated. I know sometimes they can be mean, but sometimes if you're persistent and really find out what's wrong with them or what's going on, bake them some cookies, whatever act of kindness, then those people sometimes can be brought in and not be so isolated. So that's what I think sometimes as individuals we can do. But then we have to also do self-care regarding ourselves. But I think a lot of times we do need to reach out to people who are just isolated, don't want to be bothered, because a lot of times you can reach them.
Okay, group 2.
I guess that's us. Okay, we had a really good conversation about, what things do isolate us. We learned we have a wonderful computer expert in our midst. I won't name any names, but anyway. But we had a
So we're
great,
gonna recruit for a bigger project.
but we had a really good idea of what can we do to get out of this isolation and get out of this getting wrapped up in all the negativity you see on so many of the social media platforms, especially around Ferguson. And thank you, Don Stevens, for suggesting we need to get together in one place, as a 501 or wherever, and just talk like we used to do on our front porches or front lawns or whatever. Now, this time of year doesn't look so well,
No.
but we have establishments in Ferguson, we have a YMCA, and where are we right now? The library. And you can't talk in the library like we are tonight. But just that idea of getting together and just talking, have a topic or not have a topic. Just bring your lawn chair and have a seat and let's talk. Did I say it right, Don?
Yeah.
All right.
We just started a library program where people get together once a week and just talk.
Oh.
Yeah, because that's the other thing we talked
Yes.
about, is that just like with Proud, we have to advertise and let people know on multiple levels. Like I just found out that Channel 9 is coming here to talk to us on Saturday. Had not run into Johnny, I wouldn't have known. Channel 9 wants to know what you want to look at on television. So they're coming here at 10 o'clock on Saturday?
10 o'clock Saturday, I think it's to have a follow-up conversation to guide their coverage of the 10 years after 2014.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So if you have opinion,
I'm done.
yeah, I mean, they're weird. If I come here, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known. That's what we're talking about. Why we have to have multiple platforms to get everybody, because it's like in our group, people said if they hadn't looked at the newspaper, we wouldn't have known. Some people don't go online and look at Facebook groups. Some people don't, you know, we have different platforms. I look at a lot of different platforms because I'm an anthropologist and I'm nosy. But you know, not everybody goes there, right? So we gotta remember that flyers, any kind of way that we can get the information out.
Make use of facilities like a library,
Yeah,
which many people are familiar with.
yeah,
Whether you're 13 years old or 93 years old, when you say library, most libraries are a community locale.
but there's safe places too.
Schools come and go,
Yeah.
but libraries tend to stay. And if we have a news team to show up here to give them that Ferguson has progressed, Ferguson has gotten out of its badness, tried to, and that to put a positive spin on this area, as well as people. You put up a building, you can have riots at the building. You can have positive community discussions. If you bring people in who say, oh, Ferguson's bad, 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 the news media will report that and give you a bad image. Channel 9, Channel 2, Channel 4, and they will broadcast it as such. When you put a positive spin on it, just because you put up a new building does not mean you made progress.
Right.
The people make the progress, not the presence of a building or a road. And the media, the news media has to be convinced, because they are the contact that puts the spin on how Ferguson is looked at through the rest of the state or in other areas of the state.
Yeah.
Go to another state away
Yeah.
from Missouri
Yeah.
and say, where do you live?
Ferguson.
And what's the next opinion
I was
in their
in
mind?
Thailand and I told Ferguson, they go, oh.
Because of the part of badness that was broadcast through the media, of all of the hostilities that's gone on, very little of the media says, hey, there's a community there. It's interracial. There's multiple churches, organizations, multiple religions, and they hold events. But we have a farmer's market. If you did not live here, would anyone know it?
It's not bad news.
Yeah, you had a follow-up comment.
To go along with what he's saying, and we talked about it in our group. At the city council meeting the other night, they honored a couple of kids who, I guess over the course of the summer, they ran a lemonade stand every day to buy bulletproof vests for the police dogs. You seen that on the news anywhere?
And I saw it on Facebook by accident.
Then that should have been on television.
Yeah.
You still have
That kind of a topic issue should be, how do we contact the police to bring out those dogs who are wearing those vests that were purchased by these children? Do the
They had one of
children,
them there the other night.
it should be,
You still have $3? You don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
anybody else from group 2? Anything else? Oh, then group 3? I guess. Whatever.
Great discussions.
Okay.
I guess I'll talk since I read.
Yes.
The introvert.
Yeah, the introvert.
The introvert whose husband got her to come out, so she's telling me. We talked about, ours was number one, so it was individual. We talked about as we're part of communities, as we're part of volunteerism, that those groups that we're a part of need to reach out from outside of themselves. We can't silo. And we have to, like, even if one person from one group reaches out to somebody, does something in another group and then tells them, and we cross, like you go to church and you tell somebody I volunteer for Meals on Wheels, and then they get involved in Meals on Wheels. And I think we underestimate the power of one, and that you as one person can go reach your neighbor. I have a good friend who's been inviting me to go to the movies and do things with her with 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7 other ladies occasionally. And just her asking me meant I got out of the house, which otherwise I would have just stayed home and not done it and been like, oh, I like my COVID isolation. Because it felt good and it was comfortable and it was safe. But if somebody asked me to do something, I'm more inclined to do it. So maybe go out and ask people one-on-one. It's a contact, and then it gets them going and getting involved. And then next time, maybe one more person, or maybe 3 more people, and it's amoeba and it grows and it's good. So maybe try the one-on-one approach. And know your neighbors.
Yes.
That was a really good one. Get to know your neighbors and do things like that. What else did we talk about? We had some really awesome ones that we discussed.
Oh.
He was talking about how I mentioned how he came in and immediately started a conversation about Mike's hat. But you can see you look at a person, see what they're wearing, and then start a conversation about it. So he said, hey, you're a Razorback fan. I'm a Penn State fan.
Master his t-shirt. So
Yeah, I was glancing around, and a lot of us, maybe it's our age group, there's not a lot of us that have, like, I've got something on the back that says TrailNet. So somebody who came up to me, and in fact, I've had people say there, oh, you a volunteer for TrailNet? And, somebody I didn't know starts a conversation. And I noticed Mike had this Razorback hat on, so I just asked him about it. College football, I was a college football fan. But I was scanning our group.
To be more interesting to us.
A lot of us, so that's the point, is we're something that's got somebody can start a conversation on.
And it's the fact that every time the Razorbacks have played.
Oh, gee, that's right.
Important. If you guys have 1 more minute,
There it is.
that who is
I think she's talking to you.
That's right.
No.
I have one more thing.
Scott had his finger.
Okay, go.
Oh, did he? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, do your
No,
thing,
go
and I'll
ahead.
check.
Okay. We talked about the difference between communication in person and communication online.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of negativity in our community right now online.
That's right.
I think part of why that happens and it breeds is because when you don't look someone in the face, you don't see the reaction of your words. You don't see the pain. You don't see what you're doing. I can't tell you how many times I've stewed in my own juices when I'm by myself, and the minute I talk to that person, I realize, oh, they didn't mean to offend me. Or it's okay, and it's resolved in seconds. But online, you can't do that. So let's get out and have face-to-face communication with people and avoid the negativity on the computer. It has its positives. Mike's been able to participate in our church because we have online services now because of COVID. So there are positives. We can do meetings like this, where both people can be a part of it. He mentioned it, that it helps some of his parishioners to be able to be a part of the community when they otherwise couldn't for whatever reason. But we also still need those human to human, face to face.
Yes, we do.
So that was just the one other thing I want to make sure we talked about.
Little side note, another thing we talked about, because we're talking about building groups, making small groups, is to be aware of and watch for difficulties communicating or difficulties that are not obvious. So the examples were given that if you're going to meet together in a bar or a restaurant, there's TVs around. If your person has ADHD, they're going to zone out. If they have a difficulty hearing in loud spaces, then they're going to be still as isolated in the group as they were at home. So catching those things, who's not talking?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we
Taking
have
it-
several
taking into
establishments in
consideration.
Ferguson, I don't have group meetings in because they're too loud. You know,
Yeah.
like what is the point of going there? You can't hear each other. All right, group 4.
Well, good evening, everybody. We had an awesome time. I think a lot of the points that have been made, we also made. One of the things we did was identify who our community was, our churches, our police, our nonprofit schools, medical, political in Ferguson, our neighborhoods. All of those things play a key role. We talked about how do we engage more people, which brought us to some interesting points. In our talking, we talked about the youth, and we started talking about the community center and how it offers so many variations for seniors and for them to be involved, which was a great key piece because we talk about community. Often seniors are overlooked, so those are great positive inputs. But then we started talking, and we started talking about the youth. Now, as we all know, most of us, we started talking about in some of those community-based places like churches. So often youth are not as highly represented there. So we talked about how do we engage them, which brought us to don't every parent in the room give an amen on this, but I'm going to say it, the texting. We found out that texting, and Cassandra brought up a very great point, that it's key role. Most young people text because technology is their world. So we have to learn to engage in technology for their sakes, not be as kind of huffy and puffy, because some of us do prefer being in person, conversation. We used to sit around the dinner table and have those conversations, but now kids grow up, sometimes you're in school, they text you from the next room. But Cassandra brought up a good point. In their texting, we have to remember they may not know what we're doing. So their way of getting our attention is to text us and looking at things from different perspectives other than the other part. One of the other things we talked about in the communication skill part, when you're talking about texting, I don't know about you and how many teenagers you know, but they have tons of emojis, okay? So we often talked about how do we learn what those conversations mean. So just learning those kind of things. We talked about veterans that are a very key part of our community. Do we feel we're servicing them correctly? And what more can we do in the light of some being homeless and then others that have homes, but maybe healthcare is an issue, which brings us to the point of our politicians. How do we engage them more? What do we do? We need accountability. We know what we do to get in the office that we hear of them, but do we get all of the key things that we as a community ask for? And a lot of times it requests and calls us to engage. And so those were some of the things that we talked about in our group. We also wanted to know, where are we now? Are we really making those social connectedness pieces right now in our churches and our communities? And like we talked about here, it's a wonderful thing when you guys and everybody can meet in person, but I thank God for Zoom because I had some health challenges. So Zoom have become a way of life for business, for doing things with, and for my life. And we talked about illnesses earlier, but not only that, closing out, we were talking about how all of those pieces bring us to where we are now. And I have happy news tonight. We had a beautiful member, Deborah Grady, who enjoys what Proud does so much. She's considering being a member. So we can just kudo that right there. We can kudo that. So I want to say good job to everybody. It was awesome hearing everybody. Thank you for this time. Thank you to Miss Deborah, Miss Cassandra, and Mr. Isaiah that were online with Zoom tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and last group, report out, please.
Did you have something you wanted to add?
I wanted to make an announcement. You go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, we're gonna do the announcements last. I got
Okay.
an announcement too.
All right.
Well, the thing about it, everybody has kind of touched on things that we talked about a great deal. One of the things that we started looking at is generational issues. with regard to communication, we kind of touched on that, some with texting and things.
Texting.
And we also, but the other thing we covered was, it's quick to say those kids are bad, those kids are doing this, they don't care, they're not lazy, they're whatever. And we have to be careful about the sentiment, the things that we're putting out there, because when they hear that kind of stuff, that just builds more rebellion or whatever else. And I don't want to be a part of that and that kind of stuff. So it is challenging for older generations to understand and buy into some of those communication things, because I know for myself, when I talk, I tried doing things even with some of my band members that were younger. And I say, well, I called you and I wanted to know if you were going to be okay. Well, if I didn't respond, that means yes. I'm thinking, no, that doesn't. I want you to call me and tell me exactly what your decision is. Well, and my kids did the same thing. Well, Dad, that means, I didn't answer the phone because we'd already talked about that. Okay, wow, whatever. The other thing is the challenges that we see now with hatred. I mean, there's a rise, unfortunately, in this country, and it just bothers me that we are becoming more deviant, and more hatred is just sprouting out. And over the last several years, that we're actually doing this great disservice to younger generations by bringing that into that poison. Because I really thought 5, 6, 10, 8 years ago, that the young folks was going to bring us through that racism stuff. They were going to really, they didn't see it the same way. My children, when they went to high school, didn't have a lot of issues with color and ethnic and things like that. But now I'm seeing this rise of hate, not only from anti-Semitism, but also just the rise of hate in general. And I think this is crazy. Yeah. And then you look at, we talked about media and the challenge, and media plays a big role, but they're not being responsible at all. No. It's still get the dirty laundry on TV. We don't talk about the positive things that's going on in the community on a regular basis, like you talked about, Mike talked about, with regard to this students raising money for the bulletproof vests and things like that. We don't hear about kids really establishing, going off to colleges, going to school, and doing positive things in the neighborhood. It is so quick. Every morning, the news focuses on how many people were shot and killed in North St. Louis, how many bodies were found, how many houses were burned down, and things like that. I said, wow, come on. There's got to be some more positive stuff that we can talk about than just those kinds of things. And then I think the last thing is, look, we're all preaching to the choir, right? I mean, but the things that we can do is still be advocates for what we believe in our own worlds, our friends and family members. We have to display positive. We have to be able to challenge negative within our own families and friends and things like that. When we hear ignorant spouting and stuff like that, we sometimes got to stand up and say, that's not what I think. You don't have to get into a combative conversation. That's not how I feel. And people typically, they may not say it in front of you, that they're listening, but they are. They do take that, absorb that in, knowing that that's how you feel. It's the challenge that, and we have to be as parents, because we focus on parents and the challenges of dealing with, things in the neighborhood and communities. As parents, we got to be careful too, because the children are listening, they're paying attention, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes it's difficult to go against what your father is saying, because I know when I was at McClure High School and back in the day, it was an all-white school, and I had white classmates that would say, Charles, we can be friends at school, but you can never come to my house. And I had to give them some props just to be able to say that to me, because obviously their fathers and mothers didn't feel that this was a really good thing to have me to be a friend or whatever, or to come visit them and that kind of stuff. So we've got to continue to be advocates in our communities, talk to our neighbors, get to know folks. I got neighbors in my community right now that are afraid to talk to the guy next door, and I'm trying to give them skills on how to do that. And we talk about things, relative things. You talked about what a person has on and that kind of stuff, and bring up relative content. So I'm going to stop at that right there.
Okay. Well, she has an announcement. I have one, because just what you all talking about the youth. Southeast Ferguson has a youth group, and they've been meeting and doing art and some of the art's pretty astounding. So December 11th they're gonna have an art show, and it's literally, I'll send it out, get them to send, talking about different medias. Send it out on the flyer, but because it's gonna be in the business office over on West Florissant, which you would never think of for having an art gallery, but they changed the hallways into art gallery, and they're gonna have all their artwork hanging up on there, so. I think it'd be a great thing, yeah.
Do you understand, are we welcomes Saturday at 10 o'clock here?
They had an online form to fill out.
We didn't know about that.
Yeah.
That's on
Yeah.
PBS.
Okay.
And, you know.
Yes, I know. If you go to PBS's social media, they've put it on their social media. We've repeated it in our social media. There might be a flyer out there. I think they've been a flyer at the front desk. Grab it, sign up, and as long as they'll let you in, they'll let you in. And honestly, I should not just butt in there. I would have no problem coming in and seeing if there's seats left.
Work here,
Yeah,
though.
well, yeah.
Put in, yeah.
All right, all right, I'll go online.
And can we, meet again in 2 weeks? Week after Thanksgiving?
Okay, we're gonna get our announcement taken care of first, please.
Tuesday, First Baptist Church is giving a Thanksgiving dinner Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And they need volunteers. I'm gonna help cook the dressing, but I won't be there because Thanksgiving Day is my birthday. But they asking anybody that can.
Presents.
I don't get, if I get birthday presents, I don't get no Christmas, but they asking for volunteers. Because they wanna treat as many people as possible. You know, like I said, I'm gonna help as much as I can help. I just had surgery on my back, so I can't do too much. But I'm asking anybody that's gonna be free Tuesday to come First Baptist from 9 until 1 Tuesday, and then Wednesday, they're gonna have the food, Thanksgiving, dinner. And I won't be there because I'll be 63.
And the chef is cooking it really good.
Yes, she's really good.
Excellent food.
She's really good. Oh, that's Michelle. Huh?
A different
Michelle.
Michelle.
All right,
I thought there was a sign up.
so Channel 9, we have to go online to sign up, or there might be something out there. Anybody else have another announcement? Would you like to meet again, like next year? Like in December?
Like you say next year?
Yeah. December is piling up.
It's piling up.
And I don't wanna. To do a similar type of thing. Like, what's the next step? Better still, since you asked that question, why don't you throw the subject out? And then we'll.
No, I'm
there.
And everybody's ready.
Jeff, you started, you said, would y'all like to meet next year? How about December? Come something's wrong with that.
No, so we're meeting on the 21st.
And you did
We're
say
getting the
December.
heads up from your co-worker. Right.
That's awesome in here, so.
We go past 8, lock up, leave the lights on, I'll take care of it.
Awesome.
You got coffee and conversation coming up in December.
Yeah,
Jackie,
Channel 9 sign up sheet?
yeah, I guess I should just say out as far as an announcement thing. Cause someone in my group was surprised by this. Our rooms are open to anyone, any nonprofit group, any civic organization, government group, just a few people that want a room. Our rooms are open. So, just call in, schedule the space, and you're good to go. And of course, that goes for Proud as well.
Well, Scott,
So-
you mentioned earlier that you already have organized some conversations that people just show up and talk about anything.
Yeah.
What's the dates and times on that?
December something. There'll be a flyer at the front desk.
Flyers out front, big coffee and conversation at the station.
Coffee and
Yeah.
That's where I met
Coffee
Robert at.
conversations.
Okay.
And
December is too early, I vote for January.
Some people in January as well, so.
Yeah.
in similar spirit, you might all know about it, but there's the Reading the Race group that meets
Yeah.
together, and talks about those important topics. Also a great place to get to know.
But don't you have to
We have
read
a
the book?
dozen.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, you don't.
That you do, but you know.
You got something, you just come in and riff on radio.
That's the third Monday you talking
I
about, right?
come and I listen to what the people. who
Because of
read
the-
We have a designated reader.
Pretty much. Just about
From
6
here.
people.
On the 21st, we supposed to be having some from the NSPC, Christmas party on the
Okay.
21st of December.
Yeah.
So that's why we can't make anything, any other reservations. You all need to come to that, because that's the neighborhood
Yeah,
police.
Yeah.
Really,
NPS,
that's the
what
neighborhood.
that stands for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, give them, tell them what it means.
Neighborhood Stern Police Committee. We work with the Ferguson Police.
Well, actually, yeah, Neighborhood Police Steering Committee is a designated group from the Department of Justice consent decree. So the Department of Justice said the police really needs input from the community about how the community wants to be policed. So this group is designed to provide the input to the police about how the community wants to be policed.
And also just talk about what's happening with the police. It's a really good, you really wanna know how many police are actually on the street now. What else is going, it's a really good session for keeping up with what's going on with the community or catching up with the community. And also you can ask the police chief or his representative directly what's going on. Or what, like, you know, my neighbor on Elizabeth, the shoes that got off at 12:05 every night.
You got that one in, didn't you?
Yeah, he knows about it. So the nice thing about MPSC is you have that freedom to have that conversation, but also we help guide policy in the long run.
Yes.
You know,
Michelle had her hand up.
put all this
Mike had
into,
his hand up too.
Yeah.
into the Ferguson newspaper. Put it on there, a January, a November, December into the January schedule. So other people can make dates and say, hey, I'm interested in that, let me attend.
That's a
And
good
not
idea.
a paragraph, but say, on this date, meet the police chief. On this date, meet the mayor. On this date, Thanksgiving presentation. On this date, so on. Date, time, location.
Okay,
Don't need a big paragraph. But this way, when you look at it, because I believe the Ferguson Times is a good media for communication.
Mhm.
If you're not online and you're not connected to the web, you don't have available computer or electricity, you can still read the newspaper, even by a candlelight. As funny as it sounds, yes, I've done that.
Michelle, did Michelle want to say something?
Yeah, Michelle had her hand up. Michelle?
Oh, I was just going to say that, yes, can everybody hear me okay?
Sure.
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just gonna make mention. I know Jeff had, was with the Ferguson Ministerial Alliance. I know for those that are, ministers, community partners, they will be hosting something, if I'm not incorrect, the second Tuesday of the month of December for those area community-based leaders to come together. And then there's going to be Christmas caroling with group Operation STL. So their information will be online at www.operationstl.com. And you'll be able to find out more information about the caroling. It's a group of people that will be in Ferguson that will go down the streets and they will carol. And then once they finish caroling, they're preparing for a program, which I believe that is on December 21st. So you can get that information from Operation STL. But that's all that I wanted to just kind of reiterate. I know that Jeff was there and I wasn't sure about a lot of the details. I just kind of remember what I remember, Jeff. So thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say what the gentleman was saying about the Ferguson neighborhood news. I've been writing stuff for him for the last few months, and I just do goofy, feel-good stuff. But there was a councilman a few months ago who made a remark in a council meeting. And I ran into him a little while after that. And he said, oh, I see you're writing for the neighborhood news now. And I said, yeah, I'm just doing my little bit to bring it more than a little bit above the level of junk mail. You're okay.
But see, someone's junk mail is useful to someone else.
Exactly.
You know, as there a saying, your junk is
Oh,
mine.
yeah. Right. The library. Okay, we gotta get ready.
Lock the door, you said.
I didn't want us to restore the.
Chairs.
No.
I got.
Just leave them. Take care. We don't know what the next group wants to do with them, so. No point for it to make new.
We don't have to put them up for all. Oh, thank you.
Most of our groups would do something like a. All right, I'm gonna close off the only one part.
Yeah.